Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we're talking about priorities. Yeah, that's right. We've got different people with different priorities in this country. Some of them are very happy about an exchange of an individual named Brittney Griner, who got traded. A big trade for somebody named Viktor Bout. And of course, we've talked a lot about this on this channel. We covered actually some of Brittney Griner's criminal proceedings, if you want to call it that, right? We like to talk criminal law here. Of course, I'm a criminal defense attorney. We got to see a little bit about how this worked in Russia. Not a whole lot of due process over there, if we're being honest. But we're going to break down this story today. We talked about it on our morning walk and talk. We got to fill in some gaps. Biden came out. They are really kind of spiking the football on this. They might be overplaying it, right? Everybody's happy. Okay, Brittney Griner's back. It's an American citizen. Okay, fine. But for them to sort of make this like a heroic return of some American hero is a little bit overselling it, right? So we'll go through that. Karine Jean-Pierre is very excited. Joe Biden's very excited. They brought Brittney Griner's wife out there. And so we'll go through the whole story. Now, in exchange for Griner, we're going to learn a little bit more about this guy, Viktor Bout. And I think his name is Bout, but I just like Bout better because it sounds a lot more menacing. And he is going back to Russia. And we've already talked about this guy, but I learned a little bit more about him. He's actually like even worse than you thought. They made, I think, the movie Lord of War, Nicolas Cage, something it was sort of crafted on this guy. He's extremely, extremely bad news. And we'll see what the exchange was, what the trade was. You know, we're talking sports here a little bit, so there's trades. Now, Peter Doocy went over to the White House and said, okay, well, you know, if this is a trade, like if it was a basketball trade, you know, was this a good deal? In other words, like, are we happy with this? Peter Doocy asked Karine about it. And we also heard from somebody who was left behind named Paul Whelan, his brother, is out there saying, yeah, look, we're happy Britney's back, but we sort of feel bad that our Marine brother has been abandoned behind enemy lines. A very common theme in this administration. Reaction from the senators. We've got a representative. Her name is Young Kim out of California, and she laced into everybody over this today, saying this is imposing new tremendous national security risks. I mean, if this guy, Viktor, is like an international arms dealer, what happens if he kills some Americans? What happens if he kills some Americans at a WNBA game? Are they going to be happy about that? Or is it worth it, I guess? I don't know. But Biden doesn't react when he gets asked questions about that. And so there'll be a lot to unpack there in our first segment about Brittney Griner. Then we're going to turn our attention over to Virginia. You remember Louden County. We spent some time talking about this. Biden weaponized the DOJ. They said that parents like this guy here, Scott Smith, before he got ransacked by the police, they were saying that they were insurrectionary, you know, parents, because they were concerned that maybe their kids were being attacked in bathroom stalls. And we know that there was a big investigation that was supposed to go on. There was a massive cover up from the superintendent and these absolutely, you know, I would say sick individuals, but they were out there and sort of papered over the whole thing for a long period of time. Well, good news is that there was a grand jury that was appointed to investigate this whole thing, and they came out with a 91-page document. And so I want to spend some serious time unpacking this story because it's pretty shocking, actually. So we'll go through that. That'll be a sort of a content warning segment because there's some pretty horrific things to discuss there. But that's what we've got. We've got two segments here today, my friends. And of course, if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to do that is by heading on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got C. Reed's in the house. Dan Slicks over there along with Dana36G. Sesparza is over there. She says, hi, chat. What's up, Sesparza? Dan Slick says, wow. JC says, I didn't realize Britney is 6'9". Is she really 6'9"? Holy moly. I didn't know that either. Well, you see all those fun facts that we're learning. Thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy did math for us yesterday, which was very appreciated. Thank you, Jeremy, for sparing me having to do addition or subtraction. But all right, so that's our community. Check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do, you know, separate streams from time to time. We do morning walk and talks. We had a separate video we posted this morning, or we just say good morning and sort of jump in the threads and say hello to everybody. So come check us out over there. Now, let's get really into business. Let's get this puppy queued up so that we can jump right into it. Starting with Brittney Griner. The Biden administration conducts a trade. Brittney Griner for somebody named Viktor Bout. Talked a lot about him and Britney. Of course, she was charged with possession of marijuana, had some cannabis oils when she was traveling over there. Many people obviously could see what Putin was doing, wanted to single out an American. Nice propaganda victory. What better way than to take a WNBA basketball star, if that exists in the WNBA, and then take her and use her as leverage as he wages a political war and an actual war against Ukraine. So we are seeing that all sort itself out now because Joe Biden led the way. He posted this on Twitter. He said, "Moments ago, I spoke to Brittney Griner. She is safe. She is on a plane. She is on her way home." And it's a beautiful image, a warm embrace between Joe Biden and Brittney Griner's wife. And Kamala Harris is there too, standing behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. What a beautiful scene. And we can see the president making the announcement. Here he is standing with all of the rest of them right by his side. And look who's over there, over the right shoulder of the president. There's Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State. So you've got the president, the vice president, and the Secretary of State, along with Griner's spouse, all very excited that Brittney's coming home.
Moments ago, standing together with her wife Sherelle in the Oval Office, I spoke with Brittney Griner. She's safe. She's on a plane. She's on her way home. After months of being unjustly detained in Russia, held under intolerable circumstances, Brittney will soon be back in the arms of her loved ones, and she should have been there all along. This is a day we've worked toward for a long time. We never stopped pushing for her release. It took painstaking and intense negotiations, and I want to thank all the hardworking public servants across my administration who worked tirelessly to secure her release. I also want to thank the UAE for helping us facilitate Brittney's return, because that's where she landed. These past few months have been hell for Brittney and for Charlie and her entire family and all her teammates back home. People all across the country have learned about Brittney's story, advocated for her release, stood with her throughout this terrible ordeal. And I know that support meant a lot to her family. I'm glad to be able to say that Brittney's in good spirits. She's relieved to finally be heading home. And the fact remains that she's lost months of her life, experienced a needless trauma, and she deserves space, privacy, and time with her loved ones to recover and heal from her time being wrongfully detained. Brittney is an incomparable athlete, a two-time Olympic gold medalist for Team USA. She endured mistreatment and a show trial in Russia with characteristic grit and incredible dignity. She represents the best about America. It is across the board, everything about her.
Yeah.
She wrote to me back in July. She didn't ask for special treatment, even though we've been working on a release from the day one. She requested a simple quote, "Please don't forget about me and the other American detainees. Please do all you can to bring us home." We never forgot about Brittney. We've not forgotten about Paul Whelan, who's been unjustly detained in Russia for years.
All right, so he does mention Paul, the other individual, the Marine, who is still there in Russian custody. But you can see, right, kind of a standard statement, not a whole lot to glean out of there. And again, I am actually happy that an American citizen is back in the United States. I think that two things can be true at the same time. You can have criticisms of Brittney Griner, and you can be happy that a U.S. citizen has returned home. And that's all fair, and I think you can leave it at that. The idea that this turns into sort of just an incredible victory without considering some of the consequences is, I think, is a little bit naive, right? There was something that was exchanged for this. This wasn't like a rescue operation, right? The United States gave something up. We're going to get there in a minute. And that is important to, I think, hold in context. But Karine is also very excited about this. She came out and gave a 3-minute speech. Let's see how much of this we can tolerate.
President Biden keeps his promises, and today he fulfilled a deeply important promise to bring Brittney Griner home to a family that loves her, a team that misses her, and a country that has marveled at her strength and courage. Brittney's safe return home is the product of months and months of painstaking negotiations that were the culmination of extraordinary efforts across the U.S. government. Officials from the White House, the State Department, and across the administration worked tirelessly and relentlessly to see this moment through.
All right, so let's fast forward this a little bit. She says something about the decision having to be made, otherwise Brittney doesn't come home.
Asked me to communicate once again her sincere gratitude to everyone in the administration and in their own broader support network who made this day possible. She also wanted to reinforce the commitment she and Brittney have made to stand up and speak out for other Americans wrongfully detained abroad. While we're celebrating Brittney's return home today, we have also continued to be in touch with the Whelan family, for whom this news brings mixed emotions. In recent weeks, it became clear that while Russians were willing to reach an agreement to secure Brittney's release, they continue to treat Paul Whelan differently given the nature of the totally illegitimate charges they have levied against Paul. Unfortunately, the choice became to either bring Brittney home or no one.
So they made a choice to bring Brittney home or no one. It wasn't either bring Brittney home or bring Paul home. Right? People are asking that question because it sort of feels like that's what the Russians were proposing. The Russians said, no, you got one of ours, we've got one of yours. It's a 1-for-1. Who do you want? Which one is it? But we don't know. So she says, no, it was either Brittney or not. Brittney or zero. But is that true? We don't know.
As the president said this morning, he will never stop working to secure Paul's release and return home, and he will not give up. On a personal note, Brittney is more than an athlete, more than an Olympian. She is an important role model and inspiration to millions of Americans, particularly the LGBTQI plus Americans and women of color. She should never have been detained by Russia. And I am deeply proud of the work that the president has done, this administration has done to get her home.
All right, so millions of Americans are doing cartwheels in their living rooms because Brittney Griner is now back. And so we're going to talk more about what was given in exchange for her, because that's what the United States government is really thrilled about. She's coming home. They're going to be reunified. Family's going to be hunky-dory. We're going to talk a lot more about Viktor Bout in a minute. We've got several clips from 60 Minutes, from Reuters, all detailing who this guy really is. But first, let's talk about our friends over at 4 Patriots, because this is an amazing organization, amazing company, and we need survival food. Because a food shortage could be coming here, even in the United States. Experts have talked about this as recently as this summer. We've got drought, inflation, new policies. America's food supply is near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years, super survival food, hand-packed right in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, and they stack easily. They've got different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. All you have to do, add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and use code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including this 3-month food survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order and free shipping on anything over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. And you can go to 4patriots.com, use code Robert. Get 10% off your order. That's 4patriots.com. Use code Robert and start building your stockpile today. All right, my friends. So we know that Brittney Griner is now home, which is good news in America. We're all happy and thrilled about it. But somebody else is going back over to Russia. This guy right here, Viktor Bout. And he is not a friendly fella. He's actually what Reuters calls an international arms dealer. And they put together a pretty nice summation of this dude. And look at this dude's biceps, man. The dude is girthy, as you can see here. Look at that neck. I don't even think he has a neck. Now, what's interesting is he's been in custody for a long time, and he's actually lost a lot of weight. He went in there looking pretty girthy, and then he lost a lot of weight, right? He's been in custody for a long time. Now he's going back home. He's going to be free. He's going to be able to fatten himself up a bit as he's feasting on the bodies of annihilation. This is Viktor Bout.
Who is Viktor Bout? The Russian arms dealer the US swapped for imprisoned basketball star Brittney Griner. The 55-year-old has been dubbed the Merchant of Death and the Sanctions Buster for his ability to get around arms embargoes. For almost 2 decades, Bout became the world's most notorious arms dealer, selling weapons to rogue states, rebel groups, and murderous warlords in Africa, Asia, and South America.
Perfect.
No expectations.
His notoriety even inspired a Hollywood film starring Nicolas Cage.
Wow.
Here's what else we know about him. Little is known about his origins. Biographies generally agree he was born in 1967 in Dushanbe, then the capital of Soviet Tajikistan. A gifted linguist, he later used his reported command of English, French, Portuguese, Arabic, and Persian to build his international arms empire.
Like 6 different languages he just listed. The dude is an international arms dealer who's fluent in multiple languages to build up his arms deals. It's like a Hollywood movie. It's like Jack Ryan or Jason Bourne or something. Who is this guy?
A stint in the Soviet army followed, where Bout served as a military translator, including in Angola, a country that would later become central to his business. His big breakthrough came in the days after the collapse of the communist bloc, when he cashed in on a sudden glut of discarded Soviet-era weaponry. In 2007, Douglas Farrar and Stephen Braun wrote a biography entitled Merchant of Death, Guns, Planes, and the Man Who Makes War Possible.
Merchant of Death.
It reports
Guns, Planes, the Man Who Makes War Possible. This guy. Look, they transport him with an entire entourage of people who are concealing their identities. They're so freaked out that maybe the Russians are going to extricate this guy, like Mission Impossible, Ethan Hunt style.
The following details of Bout's shadowy trade. Bout interwove his arms trafficking empire with a seemingly innocuous logistics business. He appeared to have little in the way of firm ideology, placing business above politics. His clients included rebel groups and militias from Congo to Angola and Liberia. In Afghanistan, he sold guns to Islamist Taliban insurgents and their foes in the pro-Western Northern Alliance. The end only came in 2008, after an elaborate sting operation by the US Drug Enforcement Administration
DEA.
in Bangkok.
They got him.
There, Bout was arrested by Thai police. After 2 years of diplomatic wrangling, Bout was extradited to the US.
Okay, so this guy's in custody out of the United States. It took 2 years to get him into the United States. 2 years. And they finally get convictions and they just gave him back up?
Where he faced a raft of charges, including conspiracy to support terrorists, conspiracy to kill Americans, and money laundering.
Money laundering, conspiracy to
In
kill
2012,
Americans.
he was convicted and sentenced by a court in Manhattan to 25 years.
25 years.
The Russian state has been keen to get him back ever since. Experts say the Russian state's continued interest in Bout, plus his skills and connections in the international arms trade, hint strongly at Russian intelligence ties. In interviews, Bout has said he attended Moscow's military...
Nice job. So all these guys, they take their photos like this. So, they sort of put it up on their walls. Hey, remember when we got Viktor Bout? Remember when we got him? Yeah, that was a big one, like a huge one. It probably took years for these guys to track him down. All these DEA agents. How do you think they're feeling right now? Probably not that great, right? Lots of people, lots of blood, sweat, and tears went into getting this guy, and he just went home to the Russians.
Institute of Foreign Languages, which serves as a training ground for military intelligence officers.
All right, so that's the guy that is going back to the Russians. And 60 Minutes did a whole special on him. So we're going to just learn a little bit more about him from there. This gentleman details why he is maybe the worst person in the whole planet.
Viktor Bout, in my eyes, is one of the most dangerous men on the face of the earth.
Oh, good.
On the face of the earth.
Without a doubt.
Mike Braun, the former chief of operations for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, told us Bout first exploded on the scene in war-torn West Africa in the late 1980s.
Great.
Elevating bloody conflicts from machetes and single-shot rifles to
AK-47s, not by the thousands, but by the tens of thousands.
So he weaponizes civil war in Africa.
He transformed these young adolescent warriors into insidious, mindless, maniacally driven killing machines that operated with assembly line efficiencies.
Now 43, Bout from the Soviet Republic of Tajikistan is a mystery man who reportedly served in the Soviet Air Force and intelligence service. The U.S. has indicted him on 4 terror-related charges, including conspiracy to kill Americans.
Perfect.
What makes him a threat to the United States?
He is a shadow facilitator. He's arming not only designated terrorist groups, insurgent groups, but he's also arming very powerful drug trafficking cartels around the globe.
Oh, perfect. So like fentanyl coming across the southern border. There's a war going on in Ukraine. The most dangerous man on the planet has evidently facilitated wars, funded both sides of the wars. And so we ask ourselves, you know, is it possible that more people will die now that he's out than would have died if he was in? Yeah, possibly.
Taking advantage of Russian military contacts at the highest levels and the collapse of the Soviet Union, federal prosecutors allege Bout essentially became a one-stop shop, offering an unlimited supply of stockpiled Cold War weapons to bad guys around the world, including Charles Taylor of Liberia, who's now on trial for war crimes. According to the U.S. indictment, Bout had a unique selling point when it came to weapons trafficking. A fleet of cargo airplanes capable of transporting weapons and military equipment anytime, anywhere. More than 60 planes in all. His own private air force.
Those Russian aircraft...
private air force he has. Air Force.
Were built like flying dump trucks. He could move this stuff and drop it with pinpoint accuracy to any desert, to any jungle, to any other remote place in the world, right into the hands of what I refer to as the potpourri of global scum.
The potpourri of global scum, Viktor Bout. The man many consider to be the merchant of death, one of the most dangerous men in the planet. Took the DEA 2 years to get him extradited back to the United States. Sentenced, convicted, sentenced, imprisoned for 25 years. Somebody who was intending to kill Americans. He's got his own private Air Force jets. He can just airdrop, supplies anywhere in the world at any time. He's now going home. Now, what is the United States getting in exchange for this trade? All right, now I've got some background on Brittney Griner as well. Viktor Bout goes back to the Russians. Here's what we've got, though, America. Don't worry, Brittney Griner's back.
Griner going in for the throwdown. Houston rumbling through, finds Griner for the dunk, and that's what the sellout crowd was waiting for. Zargon finding Griner! Slam dunk. Griner comes up with the steal and maybe a little showtime. Brittney Griner, the two-handed finish. Over to Griner, who dunks it in.
Whoa.
Griner goes flying in with the two-handed jam right on cue.
You're kidding.
Oh, Brittney Griner gives it a home.
Wow,
Griner,
that's amazing.
Martin will let her go. No look pass for Griner.
Gosh, okay. So that's Brittney Griner. Obviously, what on earth just happened to my... Hang on a second. I think something just crashed. Let's play that.
Griner going in.
Yeah, okay. So this is Griner. Now it's working. Okay, so the audio's still working.
No look pass.
Now you can see, all right, so that's what we've got. Nice exchange. Very nice exchange. And look, If you see some of these scenes, wow, look at, yeah, there actually are probably a couple thousand people who are probably going to be really thrilled that she's back. I mean, there were a couple scenes here. Well, that one's empty. There's really nobody up here in the bleachers anywhere. Let's see. But this one's pretty full. Like, there's a couple thousand people here filling up the bottom of the arena, which is great. A lot of fun. Here's practice, their highlight reel practice shot.
I mean, no one else, no other woman who plays basketball can do that. Two-handed, 2 feet, just goes up.
Wow.
I mean, you're going to give a crowd something to cheer about. It might as well be that, right?
Wow, yeah, so there's a couple people there who are probably really thrilled that she's back. Now, it would be a problem. Like, hopefully nobody who's there, like, hopefully Viktor Bout, doesn't cause ruckus to anybody else anywhere. Like, that would be a disaster if something like that happened. I don't want it to happen. I'm just saying, like, that would be weird if the most dangerous man on the planet, did something to harm other Americans. I wonder, well, hopefully that doesn't happen, but yeah, there are some people. Brittney Griner does have some fans out there. So, all right. So that's the exchange. Now, Viktor Bout exchanged for WNBA All-Star Brittney Griner. Some people are asking if this was a fair trade. Was this a good deal? Would you pick that person for your dodgeball team and give up that other person for their dodgeball team? You've got 2 people who are left to pick for dodgeball. Which one is your person? Which one do you send to the other side? All right, well, it's an interesting question. Peter Doocy brought it up. Doocy asks the White House, hey, Viktor Bout seems like he's a little bit more of a war machine than Brittney Griner. We have prisoners and we exchange them. Was this a good deal or a bad deal, Karine?
In this prisoner swap, why did Russia get such a better deal?
Look, I've talked about this, and I'll say this again. Here were our choices. Our choices was Britney or no one at all. Bringing home one American or no American at all.
I'd like to know, a professional athlete, we gave up a prolific arms dealer who was convicted of trying to kill Americans, who was called the Merchant of Death.
The professional athlete is also an American citizen. So let's not forget that.
That's true. That's
who
true.
Deserved,
American citizen.
and
so
and I've explained how the Russians have illegally treated, totally illegitimately treated his situation. I've been very clear on that. We've laid that out for you, and again, the president felt that this was an opportunity to bring Britney home. He is going to continue to do everything he can to bring Paul Whelan home, just like he did with Trevor Reed, just like he was able to secure Trevor Reed's release.
How can you say that he's going to do everything that he can if he said just a few days ago he's not going to call Vladimir Putin until further notice?
We were able to do this through different channels, right? We were able to do this through different avenues, folks from the U.S. government that were able to make that negotiation, have those conversations, and secure Britney's return. So we have been able to do this, and the president has been committed to getting this done. We are still working to secure Paul Whelan. At this time, we were not able to make that happen, but that does not stop us. That will not stop us in making sure that Paul returns back home safely to his family.
And just one other topic. You've said a few times that you really can't talk about communications between the Biden campaign and Twitter. Who is telling you that that's off limits?
I've already had that conversation with your colleague, I believe, yesterday. I've already addressed this multiple times this week, so I don't have anything more to add. Again, we've litigated this all week. Don't have anything to add.
So not a campaign
I'm going to the back. I'm going to the back. I'm going to the back.
Not answering Twitter questions and saying, look, there was nothing we could do. It was either this or nothing. She's like, hey, the Russians told us, man, it's our way or the highway. And, they are the Russians, they're like really scary. And so we had to just sort of say, okay, I guess if that's all we've got. Other people are commenting. They're saying, well, what leverage is left? And I don't know, right? I don't know if the U.S. has a bunch of other Russian prisoners that Putin cares about. But this guy evidently was a real big one. And so you give him up. What kind of leverage do you have for somebody like Paul Whelan? Is there any left? Doocy wonders if there was a raw deal stuck there. Now, there are other people reacting. You heard Karine say they're still fighting for the return of Paul Whelan. He's another U.S. Marine who is still in Russian custody. And evidently, he was out of the conversation. So we have Paul Whelan's brother. His brother's name is David. He was speaking with News Nation, and he was telling America how he feels.
Now that that is a reality, how are you doing? How is your family doing?
It's obviously very disappointing for us, but it's a great day for Brittney Griner. It's a great day for Americans who are being held in foreign countries as hostages. It's always good to see someone come home, and I'm very pleased for Brittney and for Sherelle and their family to be back together again. As you and I discussed earlier this week, it is always a challenge with these cases, especially when you have multiple people, multiple Americans in a single country, because each of these cases really is different and requires different solutions. And so while we were always hopeful, and I think maybe a little bit too hopeful after Secretary Blinken's statement in August that there had been a proposal made to the Russian government, that things can fall apart, and sometimes they don't work out the way you want.
Yeah, so pretty classy response, honestly. You can imagine somebody else coming out and saying, this is ridiculous. But he says, look, we're disappointed. We're happy Brittney's home, but my brother's not home. So totally sucks on that. But you could hear that sound of disappointment in his voice. Apparently, Anthony Blinken came out, and we did talk about that. We covered some of Brittney's court proceedings, which were sort of a sham. And then we saw conversation that maybe there was going to be further negotiations. And you can see just how orchestrated this was from the Russians. I mean, they sentenced her to like 9 years of hard labor, I think is what it was. They were going to say she's going to, a Siberian prison camp where she's going to just do hard labor for the next 9 years. And that left everybody in America just squealing. So they're just ratcheting it up, the leverage, making it worse and worse and worse until finally somebody buckles and says, okay, we'll give you Vicktor. Well, sure, we'll give you Vicktor, no problem. And, that's what happened. But Paul was not a part of the equation. Now, the Democrats are reacting to this. Democratic senators responding to Brittney Griner's release from within the Capitol building.
I am happy that she was released. It was a political prosecution. The notion that she was going to spend 9 years in some Russian prison was a political move, and I'm happy that the Biden administration was successful in negotiating her release.
I think this is good news for Brittney, for her family, but frankly, there are too many other Americans being held captive by other countries.
I'm glad that any American, including Ms. Griner, is released from a Russian penal colony. Obviously, I'd wish that on no one. I hope the Biden administration keeps up its efforts to return more Americans like Paul Whelan, who's still in custody in Russia.
So a lot of talk about Brittney Griner coming home, but not so much conversation from the senators about what the United States gave up. But instead for that, we can turn over to Representative Young Kim. Gosh, I got screwed up like Anthony Fauci. Young Kim is here, and she's a representative from California. She's saying, hey, this release of Viktor Bout was not such a good idea. I mean, this is an international arms dealer. This is going to be an international security concern for the United States.
While we're glad to welcome Brittney Griner safely home to her family, to make it happen, the Biden administration ceded leverage and released a dangerous convicted arms dealer who was in prison for conspiring to kill Americans. This poses tremendous national security risks and will embolden Vladimir Putin to take more Americans hostage in the future. Meanwhile, Paul Whelan and other wrongfully detained Americans remain imprisoned.
Pretty obvious there. If Viktor Bout goes and he gets back together with the good old boys club, he's like, hey, what's up, John? It's been a long time, man. Where you been? Oh, American prison. You're out? You're kidding me. How'd that happen? You'll never believe it. There's this WNBA person. What the heck's the WNBA? Don't even ask about it. Anyways, she's a basketball player. We sent her back. I'm home now. It's all great. What do you want to do? Well, I've got the tanks and the uranium. What do you want to? You want to get together? Yeah, I'd love to. All right. So that's the Representative Young Kim asking. Actually, I think a very good question. What are the national security implications of releasing this guy that the United States wanted so badly? We have another clip here from a representative from Florida. His name is Mike Waltz, and he's also stating the obvious. We left a Marine behind. I don't know why everybody is doing cartwheels on this story. Yeah, it's great Brittney's back home, but there are other people here that we have forgotten about in exchange.
Look, I share your sentiment, Harris, that in the short term, I'm always pleased when we get an American home that's being unjustly held. And I'm happy for the Griner family. But in the long term, appeasing terrorists, appeasing dictatorships never works in the interest of the United States. And the whole reason that regimes like Russia, North Korea, Iran, the Taliban, and others participate in hostage diplomacy is, in the end, we always cave, we always make a concession, and we always win. Or they always win, and we lose. So my heart breaks for the Whelan family. I think, a lot of people are asking, and rightly so. So what was his crime? Not being a celebrity, not checking enough boxes?
Yeah, he can't. Can he dunk? Can he dunk the ball? I don't know. It's pretty hard. Brittney Griner's 6'9". Unless that dude's, got some hops or some height, that's his fatal flaw. Should have been a basketball player and female.
So what was his crime? Not being a celebrity, not checking enough boxes for Hollywood. The fact that we left a U.S. Marine behind and made this choice, and I don't buy the Biden administration and President Biden saying we didn't have a choice. When do we start dictating the choices to Putin and the Iranian regime and the Taliban, rather than letting them dictate what we do and who we give over?
Good point, but they're not really interested in that. They're more interested in diplomacy and whatever that means to them, which means apparently getting dumped all over by the Russians. You have to imagine that the Russians are just laughing. Like Putin and Bout, they've got to be just like, I don't know, riding around on tigers or something, just thrilled, drinking vodka. Here is Joe Biden. He's asked about some of the reaction. Now, the White House was doing cartwheels on this. Extremely thrilled over the return, forgetting some of the consequences. And so there has been some bipartisan reaction, sort of some disdain on this thing. And Biden takes a question from a reporter. A lot of people are condemning some of these decisions. Any response, Joe?
Mr. President, what do you say to the bipartisan criticism of the Griner swap?
Please move towards the door.
Mr. President, what did you say to Brittney Griner today? Mr. President, what did you say to Brittney Griner today? What did you say to Brittney Griner today?
All right, so he doesn't want to take any questions from the press. He gave a statement, and that's it. So Griner's home. Bout is back with the Russians. And we'll see. We'll see what he's up to. I mean, Brittney Griner will be, taking some time off from the court, and then she'll be back, and then she'll just be dunking that basketball. And a lot of people will be thrilled. I'll probably, all those people in that bottom section there that, will be extremely happy. Meanwhile, Viktor Bout's going to go back, start his arms business, and probably start dropping stuff off into the middle of Ukraine. And what about all the people who are conflicted here? What about all the people with the Ukrainian flags in their Twitter bios, also that have pronouns and also all of the alphabet letters in there? Vicktor is going to certainly go back and help the Russians against the Ukrainians. So it seems like that's also a conflict of interest that nobody's talking about. But all right, at least Brittney's home. I guess that's good news. We will continue to discuss this and other cases. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing and following along wherever it is you're watching it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. So we're going to change gears. We're going to talk about this case. Now, we've got some heavy lifting to do. We've got some reading to go through here today. But this is sort of a gruesome story. So, be advised, we're talking about some criminal charges that might make people uncomfortable. But we do have to talk about it because this is some of the gross, disgusting stuff that's happening across America. Let's get right into it. Louden County, Virginia. We know that there was a saga that involved bathrooms, students, transgender issues, and this guy. His name is Scott Ziegler. He was the former superintendent for the entire Loudon County district. Loudon County, you can see, is the northern county in Virginia. Seen right here on the map, just so we can get our bearings straight. This individual, Scott Ziegler, the superintendent, was the head of basically the entire county, right? The entire organization. You can see the org chart. He is right there at the top, the superintendent. Everybody reports to this guy. And We on this channel have talked about some of these transgender bathroom issues and some of the parental objections to some of these new policies. We've talked about Merrick Garland, the Biden administration, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, DOJ, everybody calling parents insurrectionists for showing up at schools and protesting some of the decisions that were being made. You may also remember this guy, Scott Smith. He is the father of a victim. Some young woman, some young gal, a child basically, right, in high school, was assaulted by what we're going to hear from the grand jury is a student who was wearing a skirt. So extrapolate from that what you want. But before we get into all of the grand jury reporting, I want you to hear this clip from Scott. Scott is the superintendent, and he is explaining how this stuff works in Loudon County.
The issue of assaults taking place or transgender students assaulting other students in the restroom, Time magazine in 2016 called that a red herring.
You can see this is the Loudon County School Board. They're having this, board meeting, and they're talking about these issues. Back at this time, there was a new bathroom policy that they were trying to work through. Parents were objecting. This is Scott Ziegler, who is explaining why those concerns are without merit.
The issue of assaults taking place or transgender students assaulting other students in the restroom, Time magazine in 2016 called that a red herring, that the data was simply not playing out, that transgender students were more likely to assault cisgender students in restrooms than were other students.
Time magazine.
In fact, regardless of the gender or gender identity of a student, if a crime or a violation of the rules is committed, that would be investigated and dealt with to the full extent of the rules or the law. So that was Time magazine calling that a red herring.
Time.
That it's not happening.
Not happening.
In fact, in May 2019, the journal Pediatrics did a study in which transgender students concluded that transgender students who are not in an environment that is inclusive and are forced to use the gender ascribed to their birth certificate were more likely to be assaulted than their cisgender peers. So I think it's important to keep...
So the transgender students are actually going to be the ones who are on the receiving end of any abuse. The idea that you have a new transgender policy for bathrooms that suddenly is problematic for cisgender students is now a misnomer, right? That's ridiculous. Time magazine said so, and some other, pediatric study said so. The opposite is true. Transgender students are the ones who are at risk.
Some perspective on this. We've heard it several times tonight from our public speakers, but the predator transgender student or person simply, it does not exist. And I think it's part of maybe a misunderstanding of what it means to be transgender, but the data is just simply not playing that out.
Okay, data says it doesn't exist. Okay, this is Scott Ziegler. You can see his name right down here in the bottom right. He is the interim superintendent for the school. This is back at the time when they were having these debates. Says absolutely a myth. There's no data to support whatsoever that there is a transgender predator problem. All right, okay, that's his study. He got it from Time magazine and some pediatric magazine. Got it. All right, so now what happened? Well, there was, unfortunately, several incidents where students were assaulted, right? Several times in two different locations. And so what happened after the community got outraged about it is they demanded that there was an inquiry, that there was some sort of investigation that would take place, and they convened a grand jury. So Virginia wants to figure out what the heck happened in Loudon County schools. This was the order that was just filed under seal, but now recently unsealed. And this explains exactly what took place. This is coming out of Virginia, the circuit court out of Loudon County. It is the special grand jury proceedings. And the judge is Honorable James Plowman Jr. He signs off as following. He says, order from the court. This matter came before the court on the oral motion of the Commonwealth of Virginia by special counsel to the grand jury, right? So after there was an incident at these schools, which they're going to explain everything that happened here, they convened a grand jury. Special counsel got appointed and said, go investigate this because there is a mess here. And this is the motion to unseal. It appearing that the special grand jury has submitted their final report to the court And it further appearing that the special grand jury, right, this is a jury of your peers, everybody sits down, they are unanimously wishing for this report to be circulated in the public domain, right? All the people saying, publish this and please read it, America. So the judge said, no problem. Ordered, pursuant to Virginia law, the report of the special grand jury on the investigation of Loudon County Public Schools is now unsealed. It's going to be unsealed on December 5th. Of course it was. Signed off by the judge. So the people on this, the people who did the investigation, they said everybody has to see this. And here's what the report says. Drafted December 2022, the report of the special grand jury on the Loudon County Public School investigation. Warning. This report contains sexually explicit material relating to underage people, as well as profane language. So brace yourselves. We, the 9 members of the special grand jury of Loudon County operating in Loudon County and paneled at the request of the Office of the Attorney General, now detail our findings. Now, the purpose for convening, they write, was because on October 7, 2021, the Loudon County Sheriff's Office publicly announced that a teenager had been arrested for battery of a horrific kind and an abduction of a fellow student at Broad Run High School. Okay, so we've got 2 different high schools now. Broad Run. And that all took place on October 7th. Okay, a teenager was arrested October 7th. Wow. Sounds like a terrible ordeal. But just days later, right after that happened, a press report indicated that the assailant, the person who was just arrested, had also committed 2 counts of forcible sodomy on a fellow student at Stonebridge High School, which is different. The new incident was at Broad Run, but back in May, Stonebridge, 2 counts of forcible sodomy. That was on May 28th. Now, that assault occurred in the female restroom while the assailant was wearing a skirt. Okay, so that sounds like the opposite of what Mr. Ziegler communicated to us. And what happened after May 28th? Anybody have any idea what happened after that? 2 counts of forcible sodomy? Like, is that the same student? All right, so it sounds like people were going to be angry about this. Obviously, you're probably sitting in your chair feeling the same. But community outrage ensued. This is from grand jury members. Many questions surrounded how and why Loudon County Public Schools allowed a student accused of anally raping another student to transfer schools, leading to another assault. Okay? It's the same student. They just moved schools now. National outrage focused on Loudon County because the student was labeled as gender fluid. Now, LCPS had recently passed, which is Loudon County, the public school system. They recently passed a transgender policy to conform with the Virginia Department of Education's model policy. And an article linking all of these facts was published just weeks before the highest profile election in the country at the time, the Virginia gubernatorial contest. And so all of this is catching wave, right? Everybody's freaking out. Obviously, students are getting raped in Loudon County. In an effort to quell public outrage and to deflect blame, the public school system released a statement October 13th. And the superintendent, who we just heard, that is not even close. This is Scott Ziegler. Scott is somebody who says in late 2021, he holds this press conference. The Loudon County School Board agreed to conduct an independent review of the situation regarding the 2 assaults. This independent review was not announced, however, until a week later, until after the investigation had already been held. On January 14th, the Loudon County School Board, who we just heard from Scott, announced operational changes to the school system purportedly stemming from an independent review, but noted that it would not be publicly releasing the view on how it handled those 2 incidents, citing in order, okay, so this is the cover-up. So he is now saying we can't release anything because family privacy, also says student confidentiality, also says attorney-client privilege. So Scott, the superintendent of the schools, is hiding everything from America and the public as far back as January 14th. This caused additional anger from a community that believed a report would be publicly released, and they demanded to know when it was coming. So on January 15th, the governor signed Executive Order Number 4 and said, go investigate this. They've done that. The purpose of this report: the special grand jury impaneled by the attorney is not required to file a report with the court. However, given the intense local and national public interest in the events leading up into this, we wanted to ensure transparency and share our findings. While we're not going into every detail that we learned here, we want to share some high-level thoughts with the community in a digestible manner. While we do not expect this report to be well received by all sides, the contents are an accurate assessment of what we've seen. We do not hesitate to point out our shortcomings. We've gotten testimony from more than 40 witnesses. We've reviewed info from over 100 pieces of evidence, and we have faith in our conclusions. They write, we believe that throughout this ordeal, that the public school administrators were looking out for their own interests instead of the best interest of the schools. This led to a stunning lack of openness, transparency, and accountability, both to the public and the grand jury. There were several decision points for senior public officials, up and to the superintendent, to be transparent and step in. They failed at every juncture. We conclude, though, that there was not a coordinated cover-up. Except for the May 28th email, both as a body, they were deliberately deprived of information regarding these incidents. They learned not from the superintendent's office, but from public reporting that it was the same assailant, okay? So this Scott Ziegler feller is hiding information from the rest of the school boards, from the rest of the committees, or the different people who are a part of this entire organization, all being hidden. And so they're not blaming them for the cover-up. They're just blaming Scott. They say, we also believe that the October 6th abduction and the assault of a female at Broad Run, the second one, could have and should have been prevented. A remarkable lack of curiosity and adherence to operating in silos by the school is ultimately to blame. We believe that they bear the brunt of the blame for the incident. They transferred the student from one school to another. There was a breakdown of communication among multiple people that led to the tragic events. All right. So now let's get to the summary. They tell us about the first incident. On May 12, 2021, less than 4 weeks after the students returned back from lockdown, a teaching assistant at the high school called SBHS wrote to her superiors about one of the students. That student turned out to be the assailant. This teaching assistant at the school, not even the teacher, the teaching assistant, she writes a letter. She says, look, if this kind of reckless behavior persists, I would not want to be held accountable if someone gets hurt. 16 days later, that same student assaulted a female student in the girls' bathroom. For nearly 3 hours after the assault took place, the individual who committed the assault was missing, and he was at large on campus for 3 hours. Around 2:15, the father of the girl who was assaulted arrived at the school. Dad shows up. He's very upset to learn what happened to his daughter. He became very loud after initially being denied entry into the building. They didn't let Dad even go inside. They call him and they say, hey, there's been an incident with your daughter. What kind of an incident? Well, there was something happened in a bathroom with another student. Okay, what do you mean? Well, there was something that, we think it's best that you just come down to the school. Father shows up. Okay, there was an incident where there was penetration or something. I don't know how they break that to a parent. He says, what are you talking about? Where's my daughter? Let me in the building. He's denied entry, so he starts losing it. Shortly after 2:30 p.m., the father had been escorted from the school, but the individual who committed the assault was still at large in the building. The school's in charge of the kid. They've got it covered. Dad, get out of here. You're being loud and bothering us. During this time, the Stonebridge principal reached out to the superintendent's office about getting a no trespass letter against Dad. The schools are colluding now. So the local principal calls Scott, the superintendent. Man, this guy's crazy. He's really mad that his daughter was assaulted, and he's like acting like he's like out of control. So can we just like tell him not to come back here? And Scott's like, well, man, maybe, let me think about that. So the public schools, their chief operating officer arrived at the school that afternoon. Okay, the COO shows up. Superintendent's like, I'm busy. Oh, it's just a rape. Who cares? So he's like, all right, send the COO over there. I'm too busy. And so COO shows up and talks with the principal. At 3:30 p.m., COO sends an email to the superintendent, Scott, and other senior staff. He says, all right, he says, the incident at this school is related to policy 8040. Uh-oh. What's policy 8040? Oh, yeah. That's the rights of transgender and gender expansive students. See that? That's what their policy is. So he says, I'll send a Teams appointment. That's sort of like a Zoom meeting between 3:30 to 5. It's inferior. And we'll log in now and offer an update if you want to log in between now and then. He says, this is a transgender bathroom issue. He doesn't say that. He says it's policy 8040. We know what that is. So 6 people joined that Teams meeting, including the superintendent and the now deputy superintendent. We believe this Teams meeting was the beginning of the complete lack of transparency about the situation. So they all get in there, they get their story straight. They're like, wait a minute, was this really a transgender issue? Do we care about it? Whatever. Cover up begins. Shortly after the meeting ended at 4:10 p.m., the superintendent sent an email out to Louden County School Board, alerting them of the allegations of the assault at the school. At 4:46, Stonebridge principal sent out an email to the community about what had occurred. The email neither mentioned nor hinted at the assault that took place in the bathroom. Okay? Didn't even mention it. Instead, the letter focused on the father of the victim who arrived at the school. This email was drafted by the public information officer, ultimately edited and approved by the superintendent, Scott himself. So we don't know what's in that letter. They left that out for us, but something like, well, there was an incident at the school. Some father came out here screaming and shouting. Your parents, your kids may have heard about it, whatever. Doesn't even say that, oh, his kid got raped. At the June 22nd, 2021, Loudon County School Board meeting, the superintendent now, in response to a question about assaults, says, he says, quote, to my knowledge, we don't have any records of assaults occurring in our restrooms. Absolute lie. They say that true. They say, we believe this statement was a lie. The superintendent later claimed he was, quote, viewing the question in light of policy 8040. But per the aforementioned Teams meeting, we know that the superintendent learned shortly after the incident that the Stonebridge assault was stated to be related to policy 8040, right? It's in the email. So the superintendent is just a total liar. And, okay, so there you go. I don't even know what else to say it. Grand jury says it as well. We believe this statement was a lie. So do I. On July 2nd, 2021, 2 petitions, arrest warrants for juveniles, were issued against the student for 2 counts of forcible sodomy pertaining to the May 28th assault. And that happened, relatively slowly, right? May, June, July. Okay, so as required by law, the court services notified Loudon County Public Schools of these petitions. So we go back on these dates here, trying to sort of piece together these dates. He said that on June 22nd, the charges were officially filed July. As required by law, the court notified the public school superintendent of these petitions, right? One of your students just got charged with assault crimes. Those are very serious. Notify everybody else because there may be a predator lurking around your school. On July 8, 2021, the student was detained at the Loudon County Juvenile Detention Center, but per state law released. As part of his release, the court said the student could not return to the school, and the individual was subsequently transferred to the other school, Broad Run. Okay, so he's like trespassed from the first school. He can't return to the scene of the crime. So the school and the superintendent, they just say, uh-oh, what do we do with this person? Well, we better just move him to a different school. They move him over to an entirely separate high school. In early September 2021, 2 female students at the new school, okay, so after the student gets moved, they're enrolled in an art class with the former SBHS student. He approached their teacher they approached their teacher and they said, we need to move him away from us in this class. Can you separate us, please? The former SBHS student made them feel, quote, uncomfortable by the way he was behaving because he had discovered where their friend group was hanging out and he followed them around. The art teacher reported these events to the Broad Run principal, who failed to inform the teacher of the connection to the prior high school or that the assailant was a recent transfer. Nobody knows. On September 9th, just over 2 weeks into the new school year, the individual grabbed the shoulder of a girl, quote, really hard and kept tapping her head with a pencil during class. He tried to take the girl's Chromebook and ask her if she ever posted nudes online. He then asked another boy if his grandmother had posted any nudes online. The superintendent, the deputy superintendent, the superintendent's chief of staff all learned of this incident, and they all knew it was the same individual who committed the assault at the prior high school. And despite having his 12-page disciplinary file, despite wearing an ankle monitor, being closely monitored by Broad Run principal, knowledge of this incident by the highest administrators in Loudon County, and a suggestion by the court services that a more serious punishment be given, the individual received nothing more than a verbal admonishment for everything that had happened. So no wonder he's tapping the pencil on the head. He's like, nobody cares about any of this stuff. Less than a month later, on October 6th, the individual snatched an unassuming female out of the hallway. He's in school at the new school. Nobody knows who this guy is. He's kind of this interesting individual with a ankle monitor. He's in trouble. Everybody's giving him a little extra special attention, but he's allowed to have free reign. Abducts a female, puts her into an empty classroom, nearly asphyxiates her, and assaults her sexually. The individual was taken into custody that day, where he has remained ever since. So given the facts that was learned through this investigation, multiple witnesses testified that the October 6 crimes should have been prevented, and they expressed disgust, outrage, and sadness that they occurred. We asked the Broad Run principal whether he felt any responsibility for what happened to the girl, but he did not answer after his attorney objected and mentioned the Fifth Amendment. Good call. Yeah. All right, so some more details. Right, now that's all awful. Let's get into some more details here that make it worse. There was a May 12th email. On May 12, only day 14 of the in-person school year, another teacher's assistant wrote to a fellow teacher and her department chair about a student in study hall. Teacher's assistant says, "Good afternoon!" exclamation point. Even though he started the year very well, and though he gets along with his peers, the student seems to be having a problem with listening and with keeping his hands to himself. He has come into class more than once with his arm around a girl's neck. I've caught him sitting on other girls' laps several times. He doesn't need to be a global pandemic to say that that is unacceptable. His refusal and disregard to me and my assistant has us at our wits' ends. I understand the school year is quickly ending and that students and staff alike are counting down the days, but this kind of reckless behavior persists. I wouldn't want to be held accountable if someone gets hurt. One of the recipients to the email did not know who the student was and thought it was missent to her. She's like, who the heck is this? I don't know that person. She said that, no, I have nothing to do with the student. I didn't follow up or discuss it. I didn't want to invade that student's privacy. The other recipient, the department chair, viewed the email blithely. She testified that she was confused because she wasn't sure if the author meant get sick, like with COVID, or get hurt, or like something else. And she questioned the true motivation of the author. She says, oh, she probably just doesn't like transgender students. Oh, that's why she's pointing her out. She did, however, follow up with the student's case manager, who called the student's mother. None of this is documented in the student's file, and neither the department chair or the case manager spoke with the author or the emails, and nobody responded to that at all. So basically, everybody just like, yeah, it's not my problem. The department chair also mentioned this email to the assistant principal, who also questioned whether the author of the email had followed the proper protocol. He said this was a classroom management situation, and if it continued to happen, we would then escalate that to what would be a discipline referral. The assistant principal, however, also testified there had been other discipline incidents in the past, and that it was just the 14th day of instruction, right? It's just a new school year. So it was not predictive, but the email was a warning. The student had already caused enough problems to raise everybody's issue. And it was on the radar, but rather than trusting the word of a faculty member, and asking her about the concern, it was not treated seriously. It should have been documented. Somebody should have spoken with the student. None of it happened. And 16 days later, another female student was assaulted in a classroom. Now, they give us some details about May 28th. They say from 11:46 to 11:59, late morning, the assailant was chatting with a female student on Discord, which is a garbage platform that censors and throws people off of it. It's a messaging application about calling a pass to, quote, have some fun. The students were using their Chromebooks to have their conversation. The two individuals had met in the bathroom 2 weeks before to have consensual intercourse, but never did so outside of the school. Now, at 12 p.m., the two students met in the handicap stall of a bathroom. The male student became handsy and then more aggressive, which caused bruising on her chest. Wait a minute. They had met before, but never outside of SBHS. At 12 p.m., the two students met in the handicap stall of a female bathroom. The male student became handsy and then more aggressive, which caused bruising on the female's chest. The female laid down with her stomach on the floor. The male held her arms down and penetrated her. While this was occurring, a special education assistant walked into the restroom. This caused the male student to jump up. The female student was in a lot of pain and got up slowly, and when she was in a seated position, the male student pushed her shoulders down and grabbed her face. The special education teaching assistant later said that she saw 2 pairs of feet under the stall at the high school, but she did nothing about it. She said, this was not an uncommon occurrence at our high school because somebody could have their period, they might need a tampon, or somebody had a boyfriend they had a fight with. And so the assailant later acknowledged that they usually don't do anything regarding the 2 pairs of feet in the stall. But after the teaching assistant left, the assailant began forced penetration against the student, this time orally. 12:24, the students left the bathroom. At 1:28 that same day, the principal emailed the director of the high school education and supervisor stating the following. Says in an email, director says, I have a female student who alleges another student attempted to rape her in the bathroom today. Okay, we're sending this to law enforcement. The girl is currently with the nurse. We will address this by the numbers. This is the same student who was transferred here from THS from a similar allegation. Now, it's unclear why the principal included that last sentence in his email or why it was relevant. We've seen no evidence that the student was transferred for a similar allegation. The fact that the principal included it at all, however, suggests he was skeptical of the veracity of the allegation from the outset. Right? So he's, in other words, meaning maybe this wouldn't have been an issue unless there was another incident that popped up. Like, he's almost being dismissive of it, is what the the grand jury is saying, which is amazing. Around 2:15, the father of the victim arrived at the school. The school resource officer initially denied the father entry into the school because he did not have ID. The father called his wife, who was inside the school with their daughter, asking for help to get in. She told the father that they initially thought that there was an assault against her daughter was involving a sexual assault. That irritated and infuriated the father, who caused a scene, and the school resource officer eventually escorted him inside the building. The father was escorted out of the building at 2:30 p.m. He's furious, right? What do you mean she was in your school? You people are supposed to keep her safe, and we drop her off every day. You've got locks and keys all over. And what? So they escort him into the building and then out at 2:30. Now, handwritten notes indicate around this time that the now deputy superintendent learned she knew of the allegation that the victim was anally penetrated and that the assailant was, quote, missing. He's gone, out of pocket. The county sheriff's office report notes that the assailant, quote, was not able to be located at this time. A teacher who knew the assailant was then pulled in to try to locate him via camera footage. Emails indicate that at this time, the principal was concerned about obtaining a no trespass against the father. The assailant was not found until nearly an hour after that email was sent, while leaving the school at dismissal. Given the nature of the allegations, we are dismayed at the lack of the concern about the assailant being at large in a school for over 3 hours and believe the school should have been locked down to find the individual who just raped another student. The public school's chief operating officer, the same COO we talked about previously, arrived later that afternoon and had a discussion with the principal. The COO testified that somewhere along the line of the conversation during the day, somebody had informed me that the incident in the restroom did involve a young man that was wearing girls' clothes. At 3:30 p.m., the chief operating officer emailed the superintendent, Scott, that the now deputy superintendent, he said the following: "Yeah, this incident is related to the transgender bathroom policy, policy 8040. I will send the team's appointment and we'll all update each other." The meeting lasted for 30 minutes. Everybody was on it. The principal says that, quote, "all of the staff there wanted to meet with me and hear directly from me about what happened that day. Nobody else we questioned about this meeting could recall the events of the discussion, which we view as critical to a..." Wow, man, these people. It says, "Nobody else we question about this meeting, however, could recall the contents of the discussion." So the principal gives us a little bit. They say, what happened at that meeting where there were a bunch of you on there right after this happened and you were all covering this up? Principal says, they just wanted to hear from me what happened. They go to everybody else on the meeting and they say, can you tell us what happened? But they can't recall. Nobody we question could recall the contents, which we view as critical to understanding what actually happened. They say that we believe there was intentional institutional amnesia regarding this meeting. Amazing. All of these professional educators of students, institutional amnesia. It just went away. Don't even know what happened there. After the meeting, multiple messages were sent about the incident. At 4:10, the superintendent privately emailed the entire school board. Said in the email, "Hi, everybody. The purpose of this email is to provide you with information about an incident at the school. This afternoon, a female student alleged that a male student assaulted her in the restroom. The sheriff's office is investigating the matter. Secondary to the assault investigation, the female student's parents responded to the school, and they caused a real disruption by using threatening and profane language that was overheard by staff and students. Additional law enforcement units responded with the school to assist the parent." All right, so she's a lot more agitated about that. Alleged a male student sexually assaulted the bathroom. But no, the father was the one who was acting threatening and profane. Okay. Now, publicly, they sent a different message to everybody else. This is what she sent out to the rest of the world. She said, "Hi, parents. Good evening. Stonebridge families, we're grateful to come into your living room today. This is Stonebridge Principal Tim Flynn." Tim said the following. He said, "There was an incident in the main office area today that required the sheriff's office to show up. The incident was confined to the main area, the entrance of the school. There was no threat to the safety of the student body, except the student that got raped, by the way. The incident was witnessed by a small number of students who were meeting with staff adjacent to the main office. What were they meeting for? A rape investigation. Counseling services and the services of our unified mental health team are available for any student who may need to talk about today's incident. The incident is the father showing up and being outraged that the school let his daughter get raped. Students might have noticed that the sheriff's office personnel on campus, and I wanted to let you know that something out of the ordinary happened at school today. The safety of our students and staff is the top priority of Loudon County Public Schools." Oh my gosh. I don't know how these people even sleep at night. How do they live with themselves? The whole thing is missing. It's burying the lead. The whole incident is about a rape of a student. And he makes it about the father who showed up. And all of the students are going to have to get counseling because they saw him, get agitated. The grand jury continues explaining, they tell us, "This statement, which was drafted by the public information officer and edited and approved by the superintendent, deliberately makes no mention of the assault that took place just hours earlier, nor does it mention the fact that the assailant had gone missing in the school for hours after the assault occurred. jeopardizing the safety of all students. So the Loudon County officials, according to the grand jury, they repeatedly cited privacy concerns. Oh, we can't talk about that because he's underage. It's a student, we can't, HIPAA. They jeopardized also it could jeopardize the investigation. That's why they didn't put it in the email. However, for a school system that repeatedly trumpets the importance of student safety, they really dropped the ball in this instance. Alerting the community. There was certainly a way to inform them about allegations without sharing the information about the students or without jeopardizing the investigation, but they chose not to do so. We feel that since they sent an email out about the disruptive parent, they should have also sent an email out about the students. However, they didn't. Now, the assault occurred on the Friday before Memorial Day, and the school resumed the next Tuesday. After it happened, they had no formal policy on how to handle the situation. So they came up with a temporary solution. What'd they do? They said, well, we can just keep him in school. We'll just allow him to come back to class. The following day, on June 2nd, the assailant was back in school on his computer, deleting conversations and evidence from Discord. What? Okay, so the policy is that we'll just bring him back and just put him on the other side of the classroom. Just give them separate desks. Make sure they're not, make sure they're not near each other. Don't let them talk to each other. But he comes back on June 2nd. Okay. So then we fast forward a couple weeks. Parents are absolutely outraged, obviously. The June 22nd school board meetings comes up and we see what happens at that meeting. Now, much has already been debated about this meeting. Political parties and candidates across the country have used footage from the events to promote these things for partisan purposes. The father who attended one of these meetings was to discuss the policy 80-40. The father of the daughter who was assaulted testified, said, from what I understand from this policy they're voting on and what just happened to my daughter, he says, you know something? I need to go check this out. He said that he was planning on just being an attendee and observing, but now when I go through the little line, somebody handed me a speaker ticket and I wasn't signed up or anything. I don't even know what the ticket's for. I had never been to one of these before. But he later observed that an individual was accosting and bullying his wife. He testified the woman told him about the assault of his daughter. The woman came up to him and said, no, that's not what happened. Your daughter's a liar, basically. An LSSO sheriff warned them about civility. The father said that the woman was threatening him, said that she was going to ruin his business on social media, to which the father responded in colorful terms. A deputy then grabbed the father and after a scuffle arrested him. The arrest stemmed from a personal altercation. It was not directly related to the school board meeting. Okay. Father shows up. He wants to testify. Other parents are saying, you're a liar. The school says you're a liar. Your daughter's a liar. She's just trying to make this whole thing up. And I'm going to ruin your business. Wait until the trans community hears about what a bigot you are. They're going to take you out. And so he starts losing it right now. He goes to the school. They threw him out. He goes to the school board meeting. He gets accosted by other, individuals wearing rainbow hearts on their chest. And this is what it looks like. This is the scene. Scott Smith arrested for getting into an altercation with somebody who called his daughter a liar.
And the boy is wrong. God says men and women are united in one, not men and men or women and women. I also think that transgender
So there's Scott,
is wrong too.
and this lady is apparently yelling at him. I'm going to destroy you. This cop says, you're done, buddy. Don't you dare defend your daughter here. All right, now you're getting out of here. You're done. So they tackle dad. And everybody's just sort of ignoring. Yeah. So dad's now getting arrested. Daughter gets raped at the school. Everybody knows what happened, and they just arrested the father of the victim. That's Scott Smith. So shout out to Scott Smith and his family for all of the hardship that they have gone through. Holy moly. I mean, what a joke. All right, so you can see that's what they're talking about. The grand jury is talking about that in this paragraph. He gets escorted out. The father testified in front of the grand jury. He says, look, I resisted. Yeah, that's true. I did resist for one reason and one reason only. One, I knew that legally and constitutionally what they had done was wrong, and I also knew this was my best way and best vehicle to bring it to light. For the last month, nothing had been getting done. Everybody had been offered therapy and counselors but us. According to Loudon County, this assault of my daughter didn't happen. Later that evening, a school board member asked the superintendent, do we have assaults in our bathrooms and in our locker rooms? And he said, I would hope not, but I'd like clarification. The superintendent responded. He said, to my knowledge, we don't have any record of assaults occurring in our restrooms. The principal who attended the team's meeting, and that's a lie, right? He knew that there had already been one. The SBHS principal who attended the team's meeting with the superintendent that afternoon testified, that is not true. Another witness testified the superintendent's statement was a bald-faced lie. And the grand jury agrees. In the wake of the June 2022 board meeting and the publicity surrounding the father's arrest, multiple school board members reached out to the superintendent asking for additional information. Now, he had kept it all from them. Remember, all of it was sort of being censored for a lot of it. On June 27th, one board member emailed the superintendent saying, this family lives in my district. At the meeting, the father was arrested. Can you update the board on these allegations and the investigation? I understand it would be confidential. The superintendent responded the next day saying, this matter is under investigation by law enforcement and I'm unable to provide an update. On June 28th, that same board member emailed the superintendent and the entire school board saying, since the family has gone public, will there be a statement if someone is arrested for assault? And attached a social media post by the father of the victim. The same evening, another board member emailed the superintendent and the entire school board twice asking, has there been any update in this case that you can share with us? Can you please give us a high summary of the incident that took place at the Stonebridge School at the end of May? I understand there's an ongoing investigation, but please share what you can with the board and keep us updated on the progress. The superintendent, Scott, responded and he said, this matter is under investigation by law enforcement and I'm unable to provide an update. Now we get to an arrest and finally a notification. We heard testimony, the grand jury speaking, from the sheriff's office that they, quote, did not see fit to charge or arrest the assailant in the wake of the assault, but that calculus changed after the school board meeting where the father of the victim was arrested. The assault became publicized and Loudon County was put into a national spotlight. So they were not even going to charge this individual until dad got arrested and everybody started demanding it. They were just going to write the whole thing off. Other testimony and documents seem to support that narrative. School officials testified that multiple individuals from the sheriff's office told them that the assault was an iffy case and a shaky case. Additionally, after interviewing the victim and the assailant, the LSSO collected very little additional evidence prior to contacting juvenile intake of the court services. So, for example, the certificate of analysis from the lab of from the victim's physical evidence recovery kit, PERC, and the reported sexual assault nurse examiner, the SANE, it did not come back until September. So they're doing DNA evidence, they're matching everything up, and they go, it's an iffy case until all of it comes back. Then it comes back. Uh-oh. On June 30th, the sheriff's office provided juvenile intake with its initial report. On July 1, a detention order was authorized against the assailant for 2 charges. And on July 2nd, 2 petitions and a detention were ordered. July 8th, the assailant surrendered himself, was taken into custody and transferred. For the next 14 days, he spent 23 hours a day in lockdown. During this time, his probation officer advised him, use this time wisely and think about how things need to change to never come back to where you are right now. The probation officer also noted during this time frame that he had adjusted a little too easily to this experience and doesn't appear to have any real concerns at the moment. On July 26, the assailant was released to the custody of his grandmother, who lived in Pennsylvania for 2 weeks while the mother went on a pre-planned vacation. Yeah, mom still wants to get that trip to Hawaii in. The release came pursuant to Virginia law, which requires a juvenile defendant who is detained to be tried within 21 days or else released. As part of this release order, the assailant had to wear an ankle monitor, was not allowed to return to the high school, and could not use a computer. On July 6, though, the court services unit notified the superintendent of the schools of the pending charges against him. Done pursuant to the law, right? If anybody is being charged, got to let everybody else know about it, sort of a notification requirement. This notification was the source of public squabble and the subject of a series of letters between the public schools and the sheriff's office. Public schools claims that the sheriff never notified them of the offenses, and the grand jury doesn't believe that. They say no. They say both Loudon County Public Schools and Loudon County Sheriff's Offices, they both knew within minutes of each other about the assault on May, and they worked together that same day to collect the student statements and evidence. An offense occurs on the day of the incident, and they knew about it on the day. A petition, however, is a formal charging document under Virginia law. That's when the notification was required. That was done. However, juvenile intake did not call the superintendent's office, emailed the superintendent, or send a copy through the mail, and said the process in place at the time was sent via inter-office envelope picked up at the courthouse. It's unclear what happened with the envelope. Due to privacy concerns, the method of notification was a little bit difficult during the calendar year. There were 39 notifications sent. Unknown if they ever saw them. All right, so some technical stuff that, they're all going to point to. Stuff gets lost in the weeds there. But the point that the grand jury is making is they knew about the incident. In other words, they may not have known about the formal charge, but they knew about the incident because they were there. They all responded to the incident. So the notification requirement is just to kind of notify you that things have escalated. But they should have been on notice that this student was problematic. Now, all this is going on. They're going to defer over to, we didn't get notified about this, but they knew. Grand jury says they're liars. They knew better. The transfer starts here. They tell us that the process of transferring the student from one high school to the other encapsulates the lack of communication and the lack of curiosity about these types of charges. In the ensuing weeks after the assailant was released from custody, the court services unit learned from the assailant's family information that caused them to keep a tight eye on this kid. The assailant's grandmother, with whom he had spent 2 weeks after being released in custody, called the probation officer just to, quote, make sure he knew how bad things were. She also called the assailant a sociopath and says does not care about consequences. Nice. So even grandma's like, this kid's a lunatic. The mother of the assailant pleaded with the probation officer that she had been begging for help from the schools for years, only to have them, quote, enable his manipulative capabilities by siding with him and trying to be the fair and neutral party, often discounting my approach and recommendations with respect to reasoning and action. Only after his actions escalated to concerning levels did they listen to me. Most recently, I talked to the principal. We had a conversation in his office after the May incident. And after noting that I had tried all these years to discuss concerns, his staff said, now we're listening. I strongly encourage us not to wait. Otherwise, he's going to be another statistic in the adult circuit. So in late July or August, the principal of the school called the principal of the other school to alert him of an involuntary student transfer. One principal calls and says, all right, look, sorry about this. You've got a student coming your way who's not particularly ideal, so get ready. The SBHS principal mentioned the student was facing a sexual assault charge and had a court order, said he can't come back. The principal at the new school did not ask further questions about the charge or the incident that led to it. Oh, what is it? Oh, sexual assault? Oh, gosh. I mean, I thought it was going to be something serious. No problem. Yeah. What grade is he in? Perfect. He'll fit in great. An involuntary transfer requires a formal letter. And even though the principal acknowledged it was unusual for a court order to not allow a student to return, he decided to wait directly to hear from somebody else. School year began, yet it's not until much later that anybody really know about any of this stuff. On August 24th, the probation officer reached out to the assistant principal, alerted him the student could not return. The following day, probation officer was calling around as well. After talking with the assailant's mother, the director of school administration talked with probation, finally got a copy of the order. That started the transfer process. All right, so the rest of this is about transferring. We have another incident now in September. The grand jury writes, they say, it is our considered judgment that the October 6th assault should never have happened. Had any one of a number of things happened, it would have been prevented. One would have been the transfer of the student. A lot of different people were alarmed. Some people called it very disturbing. The director of the school, should have communicated this. Discipline to these incidents fell to the principal. He spoke about the incident with the probation officer, who was concerned about ongoing bizarre behaviors by the student, saying, I wonder why he would think this behavior is all right. Probation officer texted the Commonwealth's attorney. The incident kept going on. All right, let's get to this October incident. On October 5th, the assailant sent a cryptic message to the female high school student on her computer. The message was not seen until 2 days later. Shortly after the cryptic message was sent, the assailant followed the female and her friend into the hallway. The girls began running down the hallway from the assailant into the female restroom to get away from him. The assailant sat outside the restroom waiting for them. The girls eventually exited and ran the other direction from him. The following day after math, the assailant asked the female student to walk him to his next class, which she did. Along the way, he stopped outside a different classroom and peered in to find it unoccupied. Video shows the assailant waited for a group of students to walk by and put his arm around her neck, abducted her into the classroom, and closed the door. Once inside the classroom, put a chokehold onto her student, and then she could not breathe, and then he assaulted her. Upon leaving the classroom, the female student went to the restroom, met a friend, told her what happened. The girls left the restroom, saw the principal in a nearly empty hallway where he was working from a mobile standing desk. Instead of telling him what happened, they adjusted their masks above their noses and kept on walking. Otherwise, he'd be very angry at them. They subsequently went to the main office where they reported the incident to the school resource officer. Didn't even tell the principal. All right, later that day, juvenile intake issued a detention order and 2 petitions for abduction. It's unclear why the more serious charge of abduction with the intent to defile was not considered. The assailant was taken into custody. He's remained there ever since. The victim had spent her freshman year of high school remotely, so the 2021-2022 school year was her first real experience with high school. Lovely. Just more than a month into school, as the victim's father testified, an assault upended her life and the life of her family's financial impact, created untold stress, and the father got arrested for it. Affects her mental well-being, and the whole family's, devastated. Right. Perfect. Though the principal testified that he cares very much about the victim, he also acknowledged he's never spoken to her about the incident. Yeah. The father testified he would have expected much more interaction from them, but of course they don't care. They're all in protection mode. Fallout was massive. October 7th, the director of safety and security emailed the chief of staff, said, per our convo, a student was arrested yesterday at the school, charged with abduction and assault. Student allegedly forced a female student into the room and assaulted her. We're going to have to talk about this. They sent an email, said, good morning, board members. Please draw your attention to the emails below. I've been advised that there's going to be a press release. We'll keep you notified. Director of communications responded. Luke Rosiak from the Daily Wire emailed the public officer and asked about this. And he sent a letter. So shout out to our friend Luke Rosiak over from the Daily Wire. He says, hey, jerks, I'm about to report that a student was charged was the same student at another incident. And they start freaking out. The public information officer forwards the email to the director of comms and many other directors. FYI, they say, I've worked with counsel. We're going to handle this. No further action. Enjoy your day. Team, take no action. I've got this. 3 days later, the Daily Wire published an article stating, yep, it's the same person. The school didn't do anything about it. They just moved them from one location to the other. On October 15th, the superintendent, Scott, he held a press conference. He says the following. He reads a prepared statement, no questions. It's got input from the Donovan Group. And the grand jury says it contained numerous critical inaccuracies. He says they're complying with the law. He's making, conversation. He stated that the board member is making decisions about policy 8040. Other statements are released. Nobody's taking ownership for any of this. They talk a little bit more about Title IX. Very little cooperation from the Loudon County Public Schools. Say the grand jury specifically, they say, we highlight the lack of cooperation from the schools and the majority of the board members throughout the investigation. What a bunch of really, really honorable public servants. They don't even work with the grand jury who's investigating their own malfeasance. Love it. We expected these public servants to provide clarity, transparency, and a willingness. Instead, we were met with obfuscation, deflection, obvious legal strategies designed to frustrate our work. Well, they're all in protection mode. I mean, they're all honestly, as a defense lawyer, yeah, you're going to be telling them to shut their mouths because they're responsible for catastrophic gross negligence, maybe criminal negligence, depends. On April 7th, the first act of the special grand jury was to authorize subpoenas. Though the public schools said that they were going to cooperate, they did not. They experienced a very different posture behind closed doors. So just remember that. Every time these board members are on, no, we care about students. They don't care. From the outset, Loudon County school boards put up roadblocks to obstruct our investigation. The chairman, the superintendent, both represented by the same attorney, submitted a motion to quash the subpoenas, saying that they're invalid. The court rejected the arguments. 6 days later, an elementary school principal, represented by the same attorney, filed a motion to quash. Court rejected those arguments. Same attorney filed another one, rejected. Teachers, many of them, motions to quash. They don't want to talk about anything. They filed a civil complaint in court seeking an injunction to stop the grand jury. The grand jury is noticing that they're trying to stop their own work. The complaint recycled the same garbage arguments that we heard from previously. We sent subpoenas to school board members, true to form, lawyers for the school board and the superintendent. They filed motions to quash. They were obstructionists throughout the entire process. They were trying to control the flow of information. They say, we received an email about policy 8040. Even though it should have been produced many months earlier, this email was produced pursuant to a different subpoena. Division counsel learned we had this email. School board members testified. Yeah. There is absolutely no evidence the father said anything about policy 8040 or that he even knew what it was. No school board member could provide any evidence. All right. So they've got recommendations. They say, we have the following recommendations: better transparency, better communication. They say that they should re-examine their transfer process. Don't transfer rapists from one school to another. They say that the safety and security needs to be more involved, in that stuff. The school board should tighten its policies about the type of apps available to students. Maybe, don't let them get Discord. The elected members should limit the degree to which legitimate members are protected by attorney-client privilege, so they should open up a little bit more. Actually talk about criminal conduct by students. Strengthen avenues of support for advocacy. The superintendent's recommendation for the non-renewal of the teacher's contract should be the subject of a separate agenda. And in conclusion, they write, although Loudon County Public Schools has taken positive steps, such as increasing different provisions, whether intended or not, this practice conveys to the public a sense of apathy. They have not served our community well. The culture needs to change. Stronger leadership would address problems head on. As 9 members of this community, we are certain the public would reward leadership. The above is the final report of the special grand jury and reflects the true and accurate testimony and evidence. Signed by Kenneth P. Althswad, dated December 22nd. And the rest of this is all attachments. So if you want to go through all of the attachments, you can see some of the Discord messages. We're not going to go through all of the emails. He referenced a lot of this, but you can see some of the conversations. Right. School board meetings, grand jury's got all of the attachments. You can see probably some of the motions to quash while they're trying to shut everybody up. Title IX. Loudon County Public Schools. Doug, not trying to be difficult. The original email stated, I have a student who alleges another student attempted to rape her. Says the allegation is not of a sexual assault, but of an attempted sexual assault. Okay. And he's right about this. Chief of Staff. He says, well, your email says it wasn't an actual rape. It was an attempted rape. So he goes to the law. Sexual assault means the following. He says, my review based on the information, it doesn't rise to the level of Title IX. An allegation of rape, yes. An allegation of attempted rape, maybe. So they're having a really difficult time defining, what should we do about this? So the public schools chief of staff, Mark Smith, is like, well, it's not really rape, is it? To use a Whoopi Goldberg vernacular. And so that, my friends, is what's happening out there in Loudon County. And, honestly, who knows what's going on in your own local school boards, because when you get a bunch of disgusting bureaucrats together who get to reign over their little fiefdoms and take control and power and endless gobs of money, all in the names of the students, they'd rather have total control over your kids than you have any control over your kids. And that's why people like Scott Smith get arrested. One of the most disgusting stories we've talked about here. And we will continue to cover it. And shout out to everybody who's done the heavy lifting on that, including the guys over at the Daily Wire. What a story. And shout out to Speech Unleashed for suggesting this story and recommending it, that we cover it. Very, very nice ping. All right, my friends. Now, that is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground, talked about Loudon County, and went through the Griner trade. We've got Viktor Bout, who's now going to be ransacking the world, courtesy of America. You're welcome, world. But we have to now hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. Of course, we're going to jump over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party, which we will do exclusively on locals today. And but before we get there, I saw some super chats come in. I think I saw a member addition coming out from our friend Zulu that came in on the program. And so let me see if I can figure out how to bring that up here. All right, the super chat that came in on the show, several of them, thank you very much for these. Jenny B started us off first. Says, happy birthday to my sister who passed away in 2015. Loved and never forgotten by me and her daughter, Kat. Shout out to Jenny B's sister who passed away in 2015. It's tough to lose a sibling, and I'm sure she was an amazing sister to you. And I'm sure she's watching over you there, Jenny B. And so happy birthday to your sister. And I'm sure her daughter, Kat, is very, 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 very comfortable in your very capable hands. Happy birthday to Jenny B's sister. Tina A. And thank you, Jenny, for the super chat. Tina A is in the house, no question, but thank you, Tina. Nice super chat there. Just Cause is in the house. He says, did you see the last Project Veritas leak? Gross! Yeah, I think I did. Was that the one where they were handing out some of the activities? Some of the things? Yeah, that's not good. That's over on Project Veritas. All right, so I was trying to pull up these super thanks because we have gotten those as well, but I don't know why I don't see those. Hang on a second. Is there no? All right. So I can see some activity here. Okay. Zulu. Thank you very much, Zulu. I'll just say thank you to Zulu. I don't see a screen on here. Zulu bought some memberships for our tremendous chat. And I'm very grateful for the memberships. We are doing morning walk and talks, and those go live to members and to members on YouTube and members on locals. So if you want to support the show and get some extra content, that's a great way to do it, by becoming a member. And Zulu bought some people some additional memberships. And that was very generous of him to do that. And at some point, we'll do that too. Maybe we'll do that Friday or something. That's tomorrow. All right, well, maybe we'll do that tomorrow. But thank you, Zulu, for bringing more people into the fold. I'm grateful for your support of growing our community. All right. And we had another one come in from Mike Quagula. He says, thanks for sharing this information. Yeah, Mike, thank you for the super chat and for that dono here. It's some pretty important information. I think it's good that I wanted to go through the full report. I mean, as full as we can. It's a 92-page report, so all of these are attachments and addendums, but I did want to make sure we read through the executive summary and got through basically the full thing, because I think it is critically important that people know what is going on out there, because gross. Thank you, Mike. Mike Quaglia. All right. And I think that is about it for us on the day, my friends. I forgot to mention I forgot to do this, our Twitter. We're live streaming also on Twitter right now. And shout out to all 3 of our viewers who are over there. All 3 of them. We're grateful for you. Thank you for being in there and holding the fort down for us on our Twitter thread. Eventually, Elon's going to modify this whole thing, and it's going to be great, and there's going to be live chats on here, and it's just going to be amazing. But in the meantime, shout outs to Bobette, who says, Happy Thanksgiving trick or treat on Amazon. And we also had this one from Rebecca. Rebecca sharing the one from Viva, saying, she just pooped on me. I saw a great Viva clip the other day where he was shocked that people have sex with more than 100 people or something like that. Who were they talking about? It was a good clip. Maybe it was on his locals. It was hilarious. I was laughing like a little caboose off. We love Viva. All right. And so that's what we've got over on the Twitter spaces. But we're going to jump off of YouTube. We're going to jump off of Facebook. And we're just going to go over to locals. So if you want to come and join us, it's watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to jump off Rumble as well and Twitter. And we're just going to go right back over to locals. So come check us out. It's free. Don't have to pay anything. You can just kind of lurk out there, hang in the chat if you want to just hang on. And that way you don't have to leave anywhere. Twitter 2.0 is live. What is this? What is this news? What's Twitter 2.0? I just did a refresh on Twitter. It looks the same. In fact, let's see what Elon's up to before we get out of here. He says Falcon 9 first stage has landed. The rockets are the coolest thing. All right. So any news that's relevant for us here before we wrap it up? Let's see if he has any replies about Twitter. Chat saying Twitter 2 is out. Pretty wild. You can engage in a back and forth with over 100,000 people live on Twitter. That is true. News breaking on Twitter before the mainstream media. All right. So I don't know if there is Twitter 2 or what that looks like, but I'm looking forward to it. In the meantime, my friends, head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to jump over there for our after party. Before we wrap it up on the day, I want to say thank you to our friends over at 4patriots.com. They're a great sponsor of the program, and you can get 10% off everything in their store at 4patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off. And of course, you need your survival food. You need your survival gear in case stuff hits the fan, obviously. Also, don't forget that I am a lawyer. We have a lot of fun here, but we have a whole law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona, where every single day we've got a team of people who are dedicated to helping good people facing criminal charges find that safety and clarity and hope that we talk about so that they can get things back on track, make sure that they don't get convicted of a crime, protect their future. And we do a great job. And so we'd love to speak with anybody who needs help. Sometimes they're here locally. Sometimes they're just visiting. They travel back out of state. They get in trouble. We can help. 480-787-0394. Online at rrlawaz.com. Of course, free case evaluations over there. And so thank you to the mods who modded down the fort for us. Big shout outs to Vienticus Prime, K Bean, although it was a little light for the mods here today. Lean, I think we're missing Lean playing hooky. We got Ronnie, Cole, Zulu was here. Geomancy stopped by at the beginning. And I'm grateful for everybody who mods the fort down for us. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Locals, don't go anywhere. We're going to go dark and then we'll come right back in a second. But if you're not joining us, my friends, I do hope you'll at least come back and see us right here tomorrow, same time, same place, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.